Western North Carolina is fantastic habitat for Sasquatch.
You have these incredible mountains. You've got, for instance, the Linville Gorge, which is one of the largest gorges east of the Mississippi River. We also have Mount Mitchell, one of the tallest mountain peaks. In fact, it is, I believe, the tallest mountain peak east of the Mississippi.
It's weird, up through this part of Western North Carolina, if you just drive around right now, you see the Bigfoot motifs everywhere. Some people are obviously doing it tongue-in-cheek. For a lot of people, it's literally as real as the tree I'm sitting in front of right now.
My uncle does not believe in Sasquatch whatsoever. He thinks what we do is silly, kind of a joke, and he laughs about it and pokes fun at us, of course. But then, you throw a couple of whiskeys in him, and he'll tell you that he was out camping up at Sunburst, and he's there and looking, and he sees these two large, red, self-illuminated eyes, like glowing eyes, just looking at him. It's like, okay, so you don't think Bigfoot is a thing, but you think this is totally normal, that there's like red eyes glowing at you from 8 feet in the air. He goes, well, I told it I wouldn't mess with it if it didn't mess with me.
And there was an enigmatic individual I spoke to one evening, a man by the name of Lossie. And he had recounted to me an incident in the 1950s when he'd been squirrel hunting on Soco Mountain. And he said that there were these huge footprints that looked just like a human foot, except he says, they were much larger than a human. So I asked him, I said, Mr. Lossie, as an indigenous Cherokee, do you have a name for this creature? And he says, oh yeah, we always called him Bigfoot.
Before we get this video started, since it is about North Carolina, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the catastrophic effects of the recent hurricane that hit much of North Carolina. In late September, Hurricane Helene swept through much of the American South, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. Western North Carolina, and in particular many of the mountainous regions around Asheville and other areas, were hit very hard. Entire roads, towns, and communities were wiped out overnight, in some cases due to extreme flooding. At least 115 people were killed in North Carolina as a result of the hurricane, with an untold amount of property damage caused as a result. Even now, 1 month later, the destruction is still evident, and it will take a long time for these places to bounce back. They could certainly use a helping hand, so here are some ways that you can help North Carolina recover. One simple way is to visit parts of Western North Carolina and spend some tourism dollars in the communities that need the money. Here's what visitnc.com says in a recent travel update for Western North Carolina. Quote, recovery from Hurricane Helene is ongoing in the mountain and foothill regions of North Carolina. Most highways in western North Carolina are open, with many destinations ready and welcoming visitors for fall travel. However, some roads remain closed or have restrictions. Of particular note are closures on both I-40 and I-26 at the Tennessee state line, impacting travel between North Carolina and Tennessee. DriveNC.gov provides current road conditions throughout the region, including alternate route recommendations for traffic on I-40 and I-26, end quote. Be sure to check out their interactive map to see closed areas and roads. There are many humanitarian groups and efforts underway to help rebuild the affected communities. Samaritan's Purse is one group doing a lot of post-disaster rebuilding in western North Carolina, and if you'd like to contribute to their efforts, please check out their website. Haywood Christian Ministry is also doing plenty of work on the ground, and they have a donation page on their website if you'd like to contribute. These are just a few ways you can help the people of North Carolina. However, there are many other groups and organizations doing great work as well. In these tough and trying times, I'm sure the people of North Carolina could use all the help they can get. Now, on with the video.
Western North Carolina is fantastic habitat for Sasquatches, and I've always been intrigued with the area because I was very good friends with Michael Green. Michael Green passed away a few years ago, but I've known Michael since 2005 or 6 or something like that. I've known him for a long time, and he and I have always been very, very close, just good friends. He'd tell me about what they're doing out there on expeditions. He told me about his sighting he had a year before he filmed it, and that one spot, the West Morris Campground, has a lot of stuff because a lot of Bigfooters go there. A lot of people hear things in the vicinity. I mean, I think I may have seen a Sasquatch not too far from there, actually, through a thermal imager one night while filming Finding Bigfoot. In fact, that area is really cool. And sure, it's North Carolina. People don't think of that as Sasquatch habitat, but that's because everybody's in the cities, down by the coast and stuff. You go up into the Appalachians on that side of the state, man, not a lot of folks live out there. And there's people around and stuff, and it turns out those people see Sasquatches fairly commonly, you know. It's not an everyday occurrence, but people out there, there's no shortage of Sasquatch reports from Western North Carolina.
As far as the geography of the Southern Appalachians, naturally I choose to live here. I happen to have been born here, but what I love about this region is the fact that you have these incredible mountains. You've got, for instance, the Linville Gorge, which is one of the largest gorges east of the Mississippi River. We also have Mount Mitchell, one of the tallest mountain peaks. In fact, it is, I believe, the tallest mountain peak east of the Mississippi. But there's also Mount Pisgah, which has a great big tower on it. And these offer some excellent hiking opportunities. You have really lush vegetation, technically, a deciduous rainforest environment here. So it can be really muggy, pretty humid in the summertime. But again, you've got a lot of wonderful streams and rivers that you can jump into and cool off. Beautiful waterfalls. And a surprising amount of seclusion too. There's quite a lot of rugged wilderness in western North Carolina. And so, since an early age, I've always been intrigued by that, because as well as we think we know our backyard in a beautiful region of the Southern Appalachians, like western North Carolina affords us, there are areas that very few feet ever tread. And there are locations, if you know how to get there, where human eyes rarely, if ever, see. And so that sort of contributes to the intrigue about this region. It's a place that obviously draws a lot of people from around the world, and for a lot of different reasons. The history, the culture, the food, the beer. But for me, I would probably always come here, even if I didn't live here and choose to live here. I would always come here for the scenic wonder, the natural beauty, but also the mystery and the intrigue that the Southern Appalachians give us.
So the terrain around here is not as rugged as, say, West Virginia is. First time I went to West Virginia, I was shocked at how the mountains just go straight up. It's a little more worn down, over all the erosion over the millions of years that these mountains have been here. This area is a little more worn down. It's a little more flowing, rolling hills. Western North Carolina has some high peaks. I'm from Haywood County, and we've got like Devil's Courthouse up there. We've got some high cliffs. We got some high elevation up there, but there's a lot of hills and hollers that it's easy to kind of get lost in these areas. Everything is always kind of tucked behind, and it's hard to kind of traverse this area. If you do any sort of like outdoor pursuit of any kind, you're well aware of how steep some of these mountains can be. But I'm just thankful that they're not as steep as the mountains of West Virginia. Because like we were up there and we were out in the woods and it's just like straight up. And I was like, oh, thank God I'm from the Southern Appalachian region.
Not as rugged, not as mountainous. Still has some mountainous areas, but it's not as Like where you're at right now, this is similar to where I grew up in Virginia. This is a little high in elevation, but Blue Ridge Parkway area, that's how it is. So, but obviously as you get further south, you know, you start getting into the rolling hills area and it gets less mountainous then. The mountains of North Georgia are not as dramatic as they are up here. But it's still a mountainous area. It has a lot of cultural, you know, similarities to it. You know, all Scotch-Irish, you know, descent people, you know, came through here and descended in. The accents might change like a little bit, but generally you're dealing with the same sort of people.
I had an opportunity to go out to Cherokee, the Cherokee Indian Reservation of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee, and to speak to some of the indigenous residents. And there was an enigmatic individual I spoke to one evening, a man by the name of Lossie. Lossie would have been in his 80s at the time I spoke to him. And he had recounted to me an incident in the 1950s when he'd been squirrel hunting on Soco Mountain in Haywood. There was the Haywood County side of Soco, which the mountain actually spans 2 counties. And he said on the Haywood County side there had been a logging operation there, and that he was walking up a clear cut where there was fresh exposed earth where they'd been in there logging, and he said that there were these huge footprints that looked just like a human foot, except he says, I mean, they were much larger than a human. And he said that these bare footprints went all the way up the mud along this clear cut that went all the way to the top of Soco Mountain. So he follows them all the way to the top of the mountain, and he noticed that he had a couple of opportunities to try and shoot squirrel, and he couldn't get a shot off. He couldn't, you know, shoot a squirrel. As soon as he crests the top of the ridge and comes down the other side, the footprints were no longer there. And he said immediately 2 squirrels run out on a branch, and I take my 410 and bam, one shot, and he said, got them both. And so I asked him, I said, what was the significance of that to you? Did you feel like something about the presence of those footprints prevented you from being able to shoot a squirrel? And he said, oh yeah. He said, I felt like there was something associated with that animal. My interpretation of what Mr. Lossie had been saying was that this was his interpretation, I guess, that this was some sort of a creature that was able to protect other animals. Its presence alone served a sort of protection. So I asked him, I said, Mr. Lossie, as an indigenous Cherokee, do you have a name for this creature? And he says, oh yeah, we always called him Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's weird up through this part of western North Carolina. If you just drive around right now, you see the Bigfoot motifs everywhere. Some people are obviously doing it tongue-in-cheek. For a lot of people, it's literally as real as the tree I'm sitting in front of right now. A lot of the old-time residents, people, the families that have been up here for a while, they just take it as a matter of fact. You know, the boogers, the boojum, you know, there's a lot of just different like little regional names for it. If you drive around, you see a lot of like place names like Booger Hollow, Booger Trail.
Yeah, that's like an ongoing thing with like the older people. My grandmother will talk about boogers, and that's always a threat that your grandmother would have, is if you don't behave, I'm gonna put you outside and let the boogers get you. That was always kind of an ever-present thing. And I'm actually from an area, like I said, it's Haywood County. It's near Balsam Mountain, and my papa still lives over on Balsam. But there's a legend over there of the boojum, and it's this Sasquatch creature that hoards gems and rocks. But it's that centers all around the Balsam Mountain area, and I didn't hear about that legend until I was older, which is weird. I think that wasn't something that the local populace talked about a lot. I think that was maybe, I don't know, it was just never like a thing. It was just all that colloquial booger stuff. You know, you'd always hear about the booger. But a lot of people deny that Sasquatch even exists, or that Sasquatch is the same thing as this booger that they talk about. My uncle does not believe in Sasquatch whatsoever. He thinks what we do is silly. Having the channel is silly. Hunting for Bigfoot is kind of a joke, and he laughs about it and pokes fun at us, of course. But then, you know, you throw a couple of whiskeys in him, and he'll tell you that he was out camping up at Sunburst, which is it's just south of the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's on the edge of the Pisgah National Forest. It's a little area called Sunburst. But we used to go camping up there when I was a kid, and you can go up there, go camping, and it's way back up in the mountains. It's near Cold Mountain, actually. And he was camping up there with a couple of his friends, and he left the campfire to go take a leak, and he goes into the trees, into the wood line, and he's there and looking, and he sees these two large, red, self-illuminated eyes, like glowing eyes, just looking at him. And he's telling me this story, and I'm like, well, how high up are these eyes? He goes, oh, about 7 or 8 feet. And I was like, okay, so what do you think that is? Well, I don't know what it is. It's like, okay, so you don't think Bigfoot is a thing, but you think this is totally normal that there's like red eyes glowing at you from 8 feet in the air. He goes, well, I told it I wouldn't mess with it if it didn't mess with me. So it's just weird how that disconnect occurs. I think that a lot of people, I think that the whole Bigfoot thing, for some reason in this region, it's been separated from what is a Bigfoot, what we would call a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. I think that maybe it's because there are some differences between what we see as a booger, which would be a smaller kind of aggressive creature, as opposed to what people see in the media of a Bigfoot, which is more akin to something that you'd find in the Pacific Northwest. And I think that's the disconnect there, and why a lot of people in this region, they're like, oh, I don't believe in Bigfoot, and they have, you know, all of this, but then they'll talk about boogers, and they'll talk about seeing these things, and talk about experiencing these things, and they're one and the same. I don't think a lot of people make that connection.
It's weird. It's definitely part of the culture of the area at this point. And as the area's kind of gone through like more development and everything like that, it's weird. People have kind of moved in certain areas and been a little dismissive of the stories. Maybe they come from an urban background, and then they come here and then they have a sighting or they have an experience, and it's just something that just completely catches them off guard at that point. And it's weird how people kind of deal with that. Some people just take it at face value, what happened to them, and they're just like, listen, it's real. I didn't think it was, but there's really something out there. Other people are still publicly dismissive of the topic and not very favorable to it, but then when you get them relaxed a little bit, they'll open up and kind of tell you what happened about it. And it's weird because even some of the people, one of Jessi's uncles, we always joke about it. You know, he's a lifelong resident up here. That family's been in those mountains for generations. And he'll just flat out tell you that Bigfoot's ridiculous. You know, that the whole idea is ridiculous, and the things that his parents and their grandparents saw, it's just there ain't nothing in those woods. But then you get him talking, nothing weird's ever happened to you. Well, there was this one thing that was 7 feet tall with glowing red eyes that circled my campsite one night, you know. He left the fire to go relieve himself in the tree line and saw it. And I'm like, well, if that's not a Bigfoot, what do you think it was? Well, I don't know what it was. It didn't bother me. I didn't bother it. But it's not a Bigfoot. Bigfoot's ridiculous. I mean, that's literally his standpoint on it. And guess what? He's not alone, you know. Some people will just tell you that the idea of Bigfoot is ridiculous because, again, they've got that Harry and the Hendersons kind of viewpoint when they think about it. But they'll talk to you about like boogers in the woods, you know, mountain devils, stuff like that. So, yeah, so the I don't know if you want to call it a tradition or whatnot, but the people are still having encounters up here, you know, lifelong residents, newcomers, everything like that. They're having them it's always in these areas, especially where like new subdivisions have gone up to, and people are like, well, I saw it in my backyard, you know. Well, yeah, your backyard butts up against several hundred acres of, you know, a pretty unspoiled forest at that point. And not too terribly long ago, your backyard itself was unspoiled forest at that point. So yeah, it stretches down through. It's weird. The further south you get, it's openly talked about up here. When you get into the upstate, especially of South Carolina, where we're from, completely opposite. It's weird because, again, we're based in upstate South Carolina, but we were traveling to North Georgia and Western North Carolina to do most of our Bigfoot stuff. Because quite honestly, South Carolina is not really associated with the Bigfoot phenomenon. If you look at any reporting map, and it's always, and looking back, I'm going, well, it is weird because you see the sightings in Western North Carolina, and then they just kind of jump, and then they pick back up in North Georgia. What's causing that that lack of sightings through there. The sightings are happening, people just aren't talking about it. That area is so secretive. After we started doing the channel for a little while and we got a little bit more known for it, and we actually started getting emails in from people that we didn't know, we got a couple for South Carolina. We went out and investigated them, and we released a video, Sasquatch in South Carolina, something like that. I don't remember the exact title. It was like the floodgates opened all of a sudden, just with the amount of emails that we were getting through. I've never told anybody about this, nobody outside my family knows about this. And I was just going, we've been sitting on this all along, but we just didn't know about it because we're going through those traditional methods of looking for Bigfoot activity. Hey, that's a hot spot, let's go there at that point. Or, wow, we've got a couple of witness statements of people that were very eager to come forward. Well, now you're getting those people that aren't quite so eager to come forward, especially publicly. We've really struggled with getting people in that area to openly share their encounters. And that's something that we still struggle with to this day. People will talk to us about it, meet us, and then just would you mind speaking on camera? Absolutely not. I just don't want to be out there. And I don't know what it is about that particular area. I didn't grow up in the upstate of South Carolina, but there's something about that mindset that's ingrained with the people that are residents to that area where they just don't want to openly talk about it. It's like a hidden, dark little secret almost. We've got an area down there called the Grove that we've been going to, that when we first went and scouted it, before we got any reports at all, I'm just looking at it going, it's too small. It's too close to civilization. There's a bridge that goes over part of the lake there. There's an old state highway that's still used somewhat that kind of goes through it. And I was just going, this is just not somewhere that you look at on a map and go, prime Bigfoot habitat, regardless of what you think the nature of Bigfoot is, you just don't look at that area. And we started getting, after that Sasquatch in South Carolina video, tons of reports through there. So we went out there and checked it out, and we found some footprints and some other stuff. And then we put that out, and then I'm still struggling with it because, I every time we're out there, I'm just going, I just still don't see how this is possible. But the amount of reports we're getting through there are they're insane. I mean, it's just insane. And people will even go, one guy contacted us and he goes, hey, I want to share my story with you, blah, 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 blah. And then he emailed us back going, you've talked to my friend Bob or whatever it was, because I guess he has another friend. They both had separate Sasquatch encounters. And then I guess he just went, hey, I talked to these guys that look into this stuff. Hey, I talked to them as well. But just the amount, and that's what's so weird to me because that's a very sparsely populated area. And when you go out there, even though it's small, there's not a lot of foot traffic through there. There's not a lot of people out there. And I'm going, for as few people that are physically out here, and the amount of reports we're getting, the percentage of people that are coming out here that are having encounters with something, it's extremely high. And these are people that lived in this area for generations, you know what I'm saying? Outdoorsmen and women, people that spend a great deal of time outdoors. They live in very rural areas. They're very familiar with the wildlife through there. And that's the thing, when you get these hunters, you get these hunting stories, We've had 3 separate bow hunters get in touch with us now who got chased out of the woods by tall, dark, hairy figures at that point, People that run hunting hounds through there at night, having these encounters. These guys are in their 60s. They've been doing this since they were in their teens. And they'll tell you, they'll go, listen, I've been in these woods so many times and nothing's ever happened until this one night where now my dogs won't go back into the woods. I won't go back in the woods, in that particular area. I've just moved on. If y'all go in there, be careful. You may see something, you may not, but it's definitely down there. And I can definitely see now when I look at those maps, it makes sense why the reports, again, go to almost to the border of West Virginia, stop and then pick back up in Georgia. They're happening. People just aren't talking about it. They're not calling the BFRO. They're not calling any little Bigfoot thing. I'll be honest with you. I think Jessi's accent is the biggest door opener for that because she's a Carolina girl, man. These people hear that and they just go, hey, that's somebody from this region doing it. They live here. They're not outsiders. They're not people coming here to make fun of it or anything like that. So that makes them a lot more open to at least talk about it privately. Still not having a lot of luck having them talk about it publicly, especially not on camera. But they're out there, man. They're out there.
Bigfoot's become big business in this area. A lot of these mountain towns, when mills dried up, when railroads shut down, a lot of these small mountain towns basically withered and died. over the past 15 years, I'd say, a lot of them are starting to get revitalized. We've had a lot of immigration from up north to this area, and a lot of people buying mountain homes and everything like that. And a lot of these downtowns that kind of withered and died are starting to revitalize. And part of that too is kind of capitalizing on the legend of Bigfoot. So anytime you go to these small mountain towns, there's going to be a mercantile there that, they'll have local soaps and honey and stuff like that. But they'll also have a section where they have Bigfoot merchandise, and everybody gets their Bigfoot merchandise. You've also got the town of Marion, which is not far from here. They have a huge Bigfoot street festival. So I think it's kind of become a cultural, it's kind of grown culturally. More people are aware of it. I don't know if people just kind of like it as sort of like a character. Like it's almost like their favorite Marvel character, and they kind of think of it in terms of that. Not like, this is something that is living in these woods. This is something that's actually out here. I think they kind of disconnect from it and they think, oh, it's just some kind of character. But it's strange to see that, you'll drive up these old mountain roads, and I've been here, a lot of my life, and I grew up around here. You never saw like Bigfoot stuff, you never saw the Bigfoot cutouts in people's yards. That's just something that's come about in the last 15 years or so. But I think it's becoming more culturally acceptable to talk about Bigfoot and Sasquatch because of that. And maybe as more people move to this region and a lot of the habitat for these things kind of gets developed, maybe you're going to start seeing more sightings come out of that. I know we've gotten more reports from people who've moved here from out of state and locals. So it seems like that there's an uptick on it. And I don't know if it's because there's more awareness of the subject, or if it's just there's more people having these experiences.
Like I mentioned earlier, this region's going through a lot of development, especially post-COVID. And I was curious as to how that influx of like new blood was going to, what effect that would have on the state of like Bigfoot in this region. You know what I'm saying? Would the new development and the new people that were moving here that maybe weren't primed to think about it, that it wasn't part of the culture that they came from. We've had a lot of people that have moved here from urban areas, that are now living in more rural areas. And I was kind of going, how is that going to affect the reporting of it, the sightings, like what's going to happen there? Because, misidentification happens, and we've dealt with that. The one story I like to tell people is that we got in contact with this lady who told us that monkeys were coming out of the tree line attacking her dogs at night. So we're instantly like, what? Monkeys are coming out of the tree line attacking your dogs at night? We've got to go there. We go there, and her neighbor has peacocks. And this lady is from, a very urban area. She's never really been around a lot of animals before. The peacocks were coming down to the edge of the property line, and her dogs, I guess, were darting into the tree line, going at the peacocks. Peacocks are mean, and her little yappy dogs were coming yapping out of the tree line, and she heard the peacock sound. She thought it was monkeys. So the misidentification is still there for stuff like that. But the amount of just flat out, I know what I saw. It wasn't a sound in the woods. It wasn't just a glimpse. I saw it cross the road. It came into my backyard and went into my trash can. I can't believe this, I'm not from here. I thought all those stories were fake, but I know what I saw at that point, Those have increased, and that's extremely intriguing to me. People that come in that are just kind of poo-pooing that as these poor benighted savages out here in these like rural areas, they don't know what's real. And then they have that sighting themselves. That to me really kind of strikes home that there's something with this phenomenon through there, that it's not all misidentification, that having these like new witnesses that come in that are just going, listen, I'm a retired doctor from, New Jersey, I'm down here, I bought 10 acres down here, and I saw one, I kept thinking that it was like coyotes in my backyard until I saw one, how do you argue with something like that? And this is, would you like to talk openly about this? Absolutely not. I have a reputation to maintain. I'm just telling you because somebody should know, you know. So yeah, it's been really interesting kind of watching it develop over the past few years, and it's really kind of struck home that while it's not as common as you would think to look at all the reports again, taking out that misidentification, it's there, it's going on. Whatever it is, it's going on.
If you want to investigate around here, I would suggest that you really look into where you can investigate. Like I said, there's been a lot of people moving down into this region and purchasing land, and land that was once land you were able to actually go and hike or, you know, explore. All of that's posted now. It's becoming mountain homes now. These people have second and third homes here, and they don't want you anywhere near their property. So it's really important that you kind of figure out where can you go. I know that in the upstate, in the dark corner region of South Carolina and the North Georgia, there's a lot of public lands that you're able to actually go out and investigate. The problem with Western North Carolina is the huge influx of population has caused a lot of these spaces to be overrun with people. You have, you know, Asheville has such a hiking culture that's like the destination. So now the Great Smoky Mountain National Park is absolutely overrun. You have to get permits to park weeks in advance before you can go to trails. So it's very difficult to do any kind of research in Western North Carolina or in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park because it's so overrun with people. So if you are a person that does these kind of investigations and does these expeditions, you need to be aware of that there's a lot of these places you're not going to be able to go and not run into people in the Western North Carolina region just because of the influx of people to the area. And I don't know what kind of effect that's going to have on the population of these creatures out here, if it's pushing them in different directions, if you're going to have more sightings, or if they're going to be moving into areas that are less populated, you know? So I think that the influx of people is really going to change the way that you can do research here or how these creatures exist here in general. It's been quite a weird journey doing all this, and it's really it's really been kind of life-changing, and it's constantly evolving as we go on. But I wouldn't do this anywhere else. The Southern Appalachian region it's my favorite place in the world. It's where I was born. It's where I'm gonna die, and I wouldn't research anywhere else.